Good morning everybody, welcome back to Sunday. Get your weekly dose of woodwork.
One of them.
My weekly dose of woodwork. Anyhow, last week, if you remember rightly, we started resurrecting some of these old demo boxes so that we could get them finished. And as I said, I've got stacks of them and I have to get them all finished out of the way, so it's time to get that done. Anyhow, one of the issues that we had, somebody asked me why we've got the holes in the top here. When we originally were demonstrating these boxes, we were using a barrel hinge, and the barrel hinge didn't always work because, got a bit out of focus there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, just working on it.
It's moving it. Anyhow, the barrel hinges are quite difficult to fit. So what we used to do is we used to drill an 8mm hole down the side of a piece of timber. We used to drill all the way down through into here, and then when you cut the top off it, the holes were lined up. We don't use that process anymore. Nowadays we use, as I showed you last week, we use either a stop hinge or a side rail hinge. I've found that they're actually a little better to use, they're easier to fit, and they actually last a bit longer than the barrel hinges do. So what I've found is I've got all these boxes and I've got all these holes in them. So I have to fix the holes, and that's why we're putting on this little bead around the top of it. Now the other question I was asked, why are you cutting a trench? Why don't you just glue it straight on there? Well, the problem with gluing it straight on is eventually it's going to break down and then the box becomes unusable. So to make it fit nice, what I've done is I've cut a tongue and groove basically for this piece here and the framework, and fitted it in there, because eventually what's going to happen, we're going to cut a rebate here and here, and I want some support for the screws, I want some support for the piece of material so that it doesn't break away. So basically for longevity, it's just to make it last a little bit longer and make the box last for quite some time. Okay, so what I've done with this box so far is I've added the beading around the top and the bottom, and I've put it all back together again, and then I've dressed it down so that I've got about the same thickness on both of those pieces, right? So when we close it down, you've got, you know, quite a thin piece. It adds another feature. I could always revert back to the it's a bespoke box because it's one of my boxes. You could use that as an excuse as to why you've got it there. But anyhow, there's a few little techniques that are involved in actually putting that all together, and that's what we've been going on with lately. So we've got to that stage there. Now I've got 3 or 4 boxes on the go all at once because I don't have gluing time. Now over here I've got another box where I've added the piece, and the bead's a little bit thicker than the one on the first box I showed you there. This one here is one that we're going to dress down. You can see when I cut the piece of timber I actually cut it crooked, but it doesn't really matter because I'm going to dress it down to that thickness anyway, so I'll show you how we'll do that, how I go through that as well. But before that, what I want to do is I want to show you how I actually fitted the beads. Now we cut the trench along here with our slot cutter and the big fence, and then we made these. Now I've made a whole, like I've made enough for 4 boxes. This one here I've made a jacaranda. Now jacaranda is not the same colour timber or not the same type of timber as the framework support system for the box. Like this one here is silky oak, and all of the internal componentry is silky oak as well. But even so, we can still use a lighter coloured timber and get quite a good result. I may change some of the internal componentry just to match up to this beading here. I may do something with the lid. So there's room for different things, different scope, a different way to do things. So it doesn't always have to match up to what goes on the inside of the box. So let me get these out of the way for a start. And then I'll show you how I fitted all of these, how I fit these. Now some of you may have seen my my Instagram feed where I had heaps and heaps of hinges, sorry not hinges, heaps and heaps of clamps holding things together. One of the comments was, do you need that many clamps? Well, no, not really. It's just because I've got them I can use them. So that was basically the way it worked. Okay, now when we have a look here, I've just got to get my pointer. When we have a look here, you can see there's a flat section on the top of the panel there, which means we've got to remove some of this to fit on that flat bit there. But because we used a slot cutter, there's a curve or a little radius from that point there to about here into that slot, and we've got to cater for that when we cut the bits off here. Now the reason I do this here is so that this trench does not protrude out past the box. If it did that, you'd end up with a little square bit in the bottom of each of those corners, and that it could add to the box, but personally I don't think it looks very good. So it needs to make it flat. Now the other thing that I do is, when you look at the end of the box, you can see there's the end of the dovetail at the top of the box, right? So basically that bit there is end grain, and of course that's the other dovetail that's there. You can see it here, right? So we've got side grain running along here, we've got end grain there, and then side grain of course going along there. So what I like to do is I like to match up end grain with end grain. So I've got the two bits there. That will get cut off of course and planed down, but end grain to end grain. Now if you don't want to do that, the beauty of this is that you can cut a mitre across your piece of timber here, and then you could have a mitered corner, so you could have the corner coming across here, and you could have that little piece there, and you could have a mitered corner there, so you're actually not showing end grain at all in any of that part there. So there are options for doing it this way, and by doing that you've got the support of all of the tongue right through the whole of the trench there to actually give you you know, plenty of support for the piece when you cut it down to its thinnest size. So fitting it, this is how I go about it. Fit my piece of timber on there, I just sit it there. Now these marks don't have to be accurate, they just have to be roughly where you want them to be. So that's basically, I've got to cut down to that size because that's the distance from there to there, and then I've got my little rebate here, or my radius there, so if I mark it there as well, so I've got a mark here and I've got a mark there. I'll do the same on the other end, put a mark there, and then where the radius is on there, and that's all I do for that. Now getting it off. So what I'll do is I'll just put that on here. Now do this by hand. It's quite a simple task. So nice little palm chisel. Any palm chisel will do the job. Just remove the excess. So I'm working down to that first mark there. Just taking that off to a flat. You'll notice I'm not using a curved chisel, I'm just using a flat palm chisel, and I'm rolling that as I come down and bringing it out, and I'm using it upside down, so a bevel down, and I can trim that off till it gets flat. Now Now take a bit off the corner of that, just to make it a bit of a radius. Just got to come down a bit more here. Make sure you come down all the way to your mark, otherwise it's just not going to fit. I'm just taking a bit off of that radius. Turn around to do that again. So bevel down. Keep your fingers from behind the chisel blade. I have seen people do this and end up cutting themselves. So fingers behind the blade. Nothing worse than having blood on your job and having to stop because you've injured yourself. Okay, so I'm just working that till it's flat. Turn it over and just take that little bit out of there. You'll also notice that I've got a clamp on it holding it in place. I'm not just trying to hold it by hand. Just take a little bit more off there. Okay. That should fit on there, and that fits beautifully. What we're trying to just make sure is that we're flat on the corners there and there. This one here is not quite right. There's obviously a little bit sticking up on here. Just got it. Okay, so we're spot on there now, and then it's out with the glue. That. A little bit of this. One of these and a little bit of that. And so make sure you get glue in, get the whole thing covered. Down in the trench. There's sawdust in there. And just make sure you've got enough glue in there, don't want to overdo it. Now, these little clamps. Apparently, I've heard you can get these clamps through Amazon. So I'm told you can get a pack of 2 in a pack. I'm sure, Derek, if you've got the link there again, you can put her up for us. I generally don't link to Amazon. Now what I could do instead of using those, I could use one of these and just sit that in there and just clamp it up. That's a choice. So I've got all these clamps, so I might as well use them. Thing about these is you can shift it around and just make sure everything's down tight and every little bit works. Okay, so I'll put 5 on there. Now doing the end bits, a little bit easier for the end bits. Just put my glue aside for a sec. Once you have that set up, I'll just move that clamp a little. I have a distance between there and there, and this is why it makes it a little bit easier as well. So it's just a matter of sitting that in there upside down, putting my mark on there. Then go to the drop saw, and he's going to have to do a little pirouette here. And that's the piece that's going to fit in there. So the radius on the 2 corners actually goes past the edge, so it's not very prominent in here and here. So all I need to do now is just trim up a corner of those. So I can just take a corner off there, and that's all I need to do. Don't have to take a lot off. Just talking about clamping things down and being safe, wasn't I? So I've only taken a little bit off. That's all you need to take off, and then you can pop that straight into there. It fits in quite nice. So it's just a matter of putting some glue in there. Make sure you get it down into the trench, the glue in the trench. The other thing you need to do is make sure you've got a little bit on the end of there. You don't have to overdo the glue. You need enough there to hold it in place, but just make sure all surfaces are covered. Glue out excess. A few more of these. Just lucky that I've got plenty. Okay, now I need to do the same on the other end, but I'm not going to do that immediately, basically because I might as well just get it done. Again, just mark the distance to the drop saw. use a handsaw. Take a little bit more off that one. Take enough off. It's better. Trim off the corner. Dry fits well. A bit of glue. As you can see, it doesn't take that long once you've set yourself up to do all these tasks. I've always been an advocate of, when you're doing something, set yourself up little stations to do each of the tasks necessary to complete your job. Places. No comment about the good evening, Skip. Glad to see you having a nice time there in
California.
California. And the weather's good for you and you're not on fire like you have been over the last couple of months. Just remove the excess glue. And basically that's the job done. Now it's just a matter of tidying it up once the glue is dry. So I have to let that sit aside to dry and then we'll go on with the next process. Now because I've made 3 or 4 of the boxes, I can actually do the next step and show you how I go about that. So I'll put that aside. I'll just tuck it over and put it over here. Clean up my gluing station.
Thanks for the link, Derek.
Okay, next step. Once you have all that glue, you need to tidy up the outside edge of it, which is what I've done with this here. Now it's just a matter of setting up your sanding board and just giving it a light sand so that you can just tidy up your edges. If you've got any excess, cut that off before you do it. You could use a little block plane to clean that up, or you could use a drum sander, not a drum sander, a linisher or some sort of sanding machine if you're doing it that way. But all you need to do is just tidy it up so you're nice and flush around the outside edge of there. And when you look at it, what you can see now is, and if you come in there close, Pam, you can see that the thickness of the material actually hasn't added much to the dovetail, but you are seeing end grain and end grain. And you've got the common look of the joint. When you look at the top of it here, you've got the common look of the joint if it was just dovetailed. So it's that piece there stops against this piece, which is normal. Now, if you were mitering that, of course you'd have your miter joint across the corner there, but I haven't got that happening. So now cleaning up the rest of that. The router bit that I use to do that, and I do that on the router, the bit that I do that, you can see this one here is a lot thicker, so I need to dress that down, and I'm going to dress it down to this thickness here. Now, there are no set measurements for the thickness that you want to do that to. Like I said earlier, I revert to it's a bespoke box, I can do it any which way I like approach, and whether that one's thicker than this one doesn't really matter, because when you look at the box after it's finished, You can see that over here. You can see that just
No, can't see it, too far away.
various thicknesses. Yeah, will give you a different visual appearance. So this step. Now I use this big fence. And Pammy's going to have to do another pirouette. So I'm using the long fence because the box is quite long and I need something to stabilise the box right through the process. Doing it across here, because we have feet in here, if I had the fence across this way, the fence would stop here, and what would happen is the start of the fence would kick into this little corner of the box, and it would do that to the box, and it would give you an odd shape here. So long fence for this one, and that's this fence here. Lock that in place, and any spiral bit, any straight cutter will do this task. So I could use, I've got a number of different straight bits that I can use, but what I'm going to be using, and I've got it already set up, is my TSRW12, for those of you who have one, or something like that. It's just a straight cutter. Okay, so it's nothing fancy, just a straight cutter, and as you can see I've adjusted that to just above the thickness of the piece of material. Okay, so it's about the thickness of that. So when we look at it that way, we're just above the thickness. We don't need to be any higher than that. And what we're going to do is I'm going to bring this across here, and I'm going to be working from the far side of the fence, and I'm just going to feed that backwards through the fence. So all I need to do is just make sure, and you can do this in 2 or 3 passes if you like. I often think that doing a couple of passes doesn't hurt. So I've only just taken a small amount off there. I'm going to creep up on that size there. And so I'm working from this side of the fence this time, and you can see I've got my hands above my fence. They're well away from the route a bit. What we're trying not to do is allow the box to do this or that. So keeping it up against the fence the whole time and just feeding straight through, you'll get a nice cut. Now the reason I'm coming from this direction is because the router bit is spinning in that direction, and as it's working it's pushing our piece of work against the fence. If you tried to come back the other way, it would kick it out like that and you would do some damage to your work. So this side of the fence, and it's just a matter of working my way through there. So I'll get some earmuffs, turn my power on, and ears on everybody, and we cut.
What happened there?
Okay, so what I was doing here was I wasn't paying attention to this hand, and what I was doing was that.
Oh gosh.
And so I've taken that down way too smaller than I really need to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue it on, okay, and then after hours I'm going to take it all off and redo it. But I just want to show you the process to get it down to that. So that's a blunder that I don't often do. So ears on again. Okay, so I need to move a little bit more. So I'm going to just roll that round a bit round. Push my fence up a little bit. Okay, so now I'm a little closer. Apart from that,
The whoops moment.
the whoops moment, I haven't had another one. I really don't like having those whoops moments. That looks pretty good. So that's what the box will look like. I'll have to have a little think about that whoops moment and work out what I'm going to do with it. So if you make that mistake, I think in one of our next programs or next jobs, I might work on a rectification for that one. Doesn't really matter at this stage because I've got half a dozen of the boxes, so yes, don't want to have that happen very often. What happened there was I was so focused on this in my left hand, keeping it up against here, I forgot about this one. So that one's got to stay put there, and I was just talking about doing this sort of thing with it and this sort of thing. So what's happened is I've moved it out, pushed it out too far.
Never mind.
Silly move. Never mind.
Good lesson though.
We'll get that fixed.
Yes.
Okay, so let me go to a box that I didn't do that to. What I want to do now is I want to build a lid for it. Now, building the lid for it, there's a number of things that we can do. Just let me take all this stuff off here. Leave that there because I'm going to use it in a second. Building the lid for it. One of the problems that I have with it is that material that I have there, I probably don't have any more. If I went searching, I could probably find some bits of offcuts, but I don't have the material as the same colour. So to overcome that, what I've done is I've selected some cedar that's pretty close to it. It's got similar sort of grain patterns. It's reasonably close to it.
Very.
If I tried to make that cedar panel continue from this corner to my internal panel, there'd be a difference in the colour and it would stand out a little bit. So what I want to do is I want to put a piece of silky oak on the edge of the panel or the frame so that we don't have a continuation of cedar all around the corner here. It will stop at the cedar, at the silky oak, and start again at the cedar, and by having that gap between the two, it doesn't look so far out of place. Okay, so it's just all about a visual effect. Now, the thing that I'm going to do with it, if we look at this box here, this is what we're going to do. We're going to add a bit of silky oak to the outside of the frame, and you can see this one here, the cedar on the top is different to the cedar on the thing, but it doesn't look out of place. The other thing that I'm going to do with it is not only I'm going to add one on the outside, I'm going to put one on the inside as well, so that we have this effect on the inside. Now, that cedar was the same as the cedar on the side of the box, but we have a gap between the cedar and the lace she oak that's in the top of it. But what I want to do is I want to add that and that to a piece of cedar around here, and then we're going to do something with the panel as well. So it's going to be two tasks. Now, for you to understand how we're going to do that, I'm going to have to do a little bit of drawing. Get this out of the way. Shift my boxes.
There are beautiful colours in those finished boxes. They're just beautiful.
They come up nice, don't they?
Yeah. I love, you can also see the end grain on the inserts. This one shows, well, these two both show the coloration of the end grain against the box frame. So it doesn't go out of place. You can see what it is.
Okay, time for Mr. Squiggle. Now, to get a piece of timber right and get it to work properly, we need to do a few things. So I'm going to draw this large so that you can actually see it. So if this is my piece of timber for the frame, so that's I'll just draw quite large. That's my piece of timber. Of course it'll be like that. What I want to do is I want to add a piece onto this side, and I want to add a piece on that side. So on this side here I'm going to cut a rebate, and then I'm going to add my piece of timber here. I'll draw that in a different colour so you can see. Let's do it in blue. So my piece of timber is going to fit into there, and of course I'm going to round over the edge, and that will be the outside. Okay. On the other side, on the inside, there's work to be done here so that our piece lasts a long time and doesn't fall apart. So I'm going to cut a rebate in here, 10mm deep, and of course that will look like that. And when we add the piece of material, I'm going to add a piece of material here, like so. What I have to do, because we're going to put a panel on there, I might get a red one for this bit. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut another rebate of a thinner size. This is going to be 4mm. And this one here is 3.2. So I'm going to cut another trench in there that's 10mm. And then I'm going to add on to that. What's going to happen there is that this will be our panel. Okay, now the panel will have a curve there and a curve there. And that'll be the panel and how that fits into there. So we'll be able to see that, I don't know if you can understand how all that works, but...
So it's horizontal layering.
Yeah. So we've got to layer it a little bit to actually get it to...
It's like Lego.
Just a little bit.
Lego for grown-ups. Oh, I shouldn't say that, because lots of grown-ups love Lego, myself included.
I think I don't know if you can see how that looks, but basically that's what we're going to end up with.
So you've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces.
So this piece here is going to be 25mm. This piece from here to there has to be about 20mm, basically, because that's going to be 10mm, and we're going to radius that off there.
Do the number below because you can't see it.
20mm. And this one here from there to there is going to be 10mm. Right. When we cut it all down and trim off the edges so that the whole thing fits, the distance from here to here, now we're going to be trimming it, so don't take these measurements as gospel, but we want 35mm in the end. So from this point here to that point there, we want 35mm. Now if I make that 10 and that 20, I know that doesn't add up to 35mm, but when we're trimming it down, because we've got to make the panel bigger than it normally is, we can trim it down to size, and then we can get our framework exactly 35mm all the way around. So I hope you can understand that. It's actually quite difficult to read, considering that we've got black marks here, red ones, blah blah, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, see what you can make of it. This is going to be the panel, that's going to be the cedar, this is going to be your additional material, and then of course that's the panel. Okay, I might just write that on there. So that's our panel, and this is going to be cedar. And
So
this, in this case, is going to be silky oak.
So bring over the box that relates to that so we can put the two together.
This is going to be fun.
So you've actually got a direct correlation between
So
the
there's
two.
a bit of a correlation here.
Yeah.
This material here is going to be that bit there. That bit there is going to be that there. And I haven't got that piece on this box, but
Right.
we will end up with it in there. So that'll be the edge of the frame, and of course that's our panel.
But I think you've
Okay.
got,
So
if I look at this,
there's a little piece on
that,
this.
that
this one here.
demonstrates that internal inlay, the most inner one.
Oh, incidentally, we're going to have butterflies in it as well.
Oh, good.
So it's going to be a busy little panel, busy little frame. I hope you can read it. I hope you understand it. In a drawn up like this, it looks complicated, but really it is quite a simple process to go through, and we'll get through that anyway. Okay, so get that out of the way. Put that up over there. We can refer to that if we need to. I'm sure we won't have to.
I think it probably wouldn't hurt though.
Yeah, well, yeah. Okay, where's the box we're going to use? Not the one we did the damage on. God, I can't believe I make so many mistakes every now and then. Anyhow, that's the way it is. It's woodwork. Like they say, us men, we can only work one thought at a time.
So you're buying into the stereotype now, are you, Colt?
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's true.
So somebody had a smart comment about my mistake.
Derek reckons you should make the mistake of finger pull.
Oh, well, that's the point. very good idea.
Actually, yeah, just patch it.
Patch it up and make it a finger pull?
Yeah.
Yep, I can do that. If it's on the right side of the box, of course. And I didn't look at that. Okay. Panel for the top. Again, working safely.
Oh,
This is my cedar. What somebody...
Kevin Crowley's kit arrived and he reckons he spent 10 minutes trying to unwrap it.
Stanley knife, Kevin.
No. No. He's cool. He's fine.
All right, okay. You
You're
got it.
just congratulating us on the wrapping.
Oh, right. Enough tape on it to sink a battleship, eh? All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 2 pieces of this because it's the easiest way to do things. Just going to take a bit off there, and now I want it a bit longer than I need it because when we make the frame, it's going to be 4mm bigger than actually the body of the box. So if I make this at least 20mm bigger, it means I've got room to dock things down. So my pencil, so about there somewhere, and this piece of material I've got stacks left over. I can use that for the side panels. Okay, so to my drop saw. Now I've got to have 2 long ones and 2 short ones. So 2 there, 1 there, and there. So make sure that your piece of timber that you cut up is actually wide enough to be able to cut 2 of the panels out of. I'll keep that for another box. And this one here, it looks pretty good. Well, actually, oh yeah, it's nice and clean, so it looks okay. So I'm going to use that. So what the first thing I want to do is I want to cut a trench down both sides of this. Now that will be the inside or the outside, I haven't decided yet, but I'm going to cut it with a 4mm slot cutter. Now the 4mm will give me plenty of room to be able to cut a slot in the middle of the inside part without actually taking material away. So if I go back to my drawing, and I think we have to come back to this. So what we want, this inside panel, where we cut the slot on the inside, we don't want to be cutting the walls of the inside panel away, so we need to cut inside it. So this distance here, like I said, would be 4. This one here will be 3.2, right? And that way we've got support here for the panel when we do it, right? So I want to keep this material in there. So that will save all of that there. Okay, and it's going to fit into, of course, that one there.
That's awfully messy.
It looks messy. Logically it works. Okay, so formula. Let's get the box out of the way. Now, we don't sell the 4mm router bit. You can pick that up from any hardware store that sells Carby Tool router bits. I'm probably only going to get a couple of cuts in this just to show you how it works. It's coming on to 10 o'clock almost.
You've still got 10 minutes.
Yep. find the centre of my board. Again, I'll just use my finger gauge. Don't have to be critical about the distance, although I've got it pretty good. Set my height. And then bring my fence over. I have to come round this way, don't I? Okay, so I want about 10 millimetres. Find my LARK tool. Set my LARK tool at 10 mil. There we go. That's 10 mil. And I'll go to the point. Put one of those. Let's try and do this without making a blunder this time. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just push it through here. I'm going to set up my dust extractor as well. And I'm also going to use my push block. So give me 2 secs, I'll turn the dust extractor on. So ears on, everybody. Check my depth. Exactly 10 millimetres, which is fine. And you'll notice I took a cut through and I flipped it over and I took the second cut through. That was to centralise the cut so that it was in the middle of my board. Right? Now, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. I find it, once you get it in centre, it's easier to manipulate the rest of it. So that gets it there. And the reason I flipped it over is because I set this up by eye. I didn't actually take any measurements or anything like that. I set it up by eye, and so any variation that I had in setting it up is negated by the fact that I flipped the board over and centred it. So that's what's happened there. So my next step now is to cut myself a couple of pieces of timber. I just cut the 2 ends off. Now I was going to go and do it on the bandsaw, but I don't think I'll do that. I'll just do it on the drop saw because then I can set them all up exactly the same. So over to the bandsaw, the drop saw. Now my piece of timber, I'm not going to shift anything there because I want to redo the other side of the boards, but my piece of timber needs to be at least 25 millimetres wide. So if I just measure that at 25 mil, That gives me a mark to work to. And then I'm going to add bits to the outside of that. So the centrepiece is going to be cut nice and square. Set up my fence. Put my mark on there. Ears on, people. A couple of pieces for the next box. Okay, now back to my fence here. I'm just going to cut the trench in the other side of the board. Now it's 10 mil, so I'm going to have 5 millimeters material inside here. So that's plenty to actually support everything. Once everything's glued together, it'll be quite good. Okay, I'll just go to the dusty gun. I'm going to have to get that switch put into again, safety. I'm using my push block. Now the push block has got a little slope on it, which means I can hold it there and I'm not pushed hard up against my fence, but I can't actually push against my piece of timber like that, so I'll use another piece of the timber, push it there, and then I can move the whole lot along like so. Ears on. I'm going to have to work up a little pather for Pam when I walk away from the table, go and turn the dust extractor on so she can keep you entertained. Song and dance was a thought that came into my head, but no, she's not good at that. Trying to get things out of the way so that I can show you how it's going to work. Okay, so our frame is going to look like this. So long a bit. And then I'm going to add a piece of material inside there and a piece of material on the outside of that. Now those bits are going to be if you can imagine that there, and the same on the inside. That means that we've sandwiched the framework or the timber so that we've got some correlation between the box and the lid, between two bits of silky oak, which is all the internal componentry of the box. So we're matching things up and keeping things in the same order. So that's what's going to happen. Now I'm not going to do that today because we've run out of time, but next week I will have come up with a way of fixing that other little error that we created earlier. I don't know what it'll be, but anyway, the suggestion by Derek was to make it a finger pull. Well, I can do that too. So I have a little think about that. Depends on which side of the box it's on. So anyhow, that'll be it for today. So please have a good week, everybody. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do so, and we will keep you informed as to what's going on. So hopefully we'll get the error fixed, and then we'll get onto this bit here. So have a good week, everybody, and I will see you all next week.